Hi, and welcome. Hopefully you are here for your AI agent is expensive and wrong, let's fix both. If you're not, enjoy the next 60 minutes. And for those of you who I recognize from past reInvent or Data and AI Summit talks, thank you for coming again and pleasuring us with your presence here. So my name's Craig Wiley. I run product management for AI and ML at Databricks, joined today by Nick, Vikram, and Marcos. Nick also from Databricks, and Vikram and Marcos from Condé Nast, who will talk a little bit about taking some of what we're doing, what we talk about in the first half of this, about how they've implemented that successfully at Condé Nast so far. So let's dive right in. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit about why a different approach to AI agents is needed. We're going to go do a big, thick, long, meaty demo. Condé Nast will come up and talk for a bit, and then we'll finish off with any question and answers that you might have. If for some reason we run out of time, which is reasonably likely, then we'll do Q&A up here until they kick us out, and then we'll do it out in the hall. So if you have questions, feel free to keep them and make sure they get answered. So with that, apologies, but I believe I am contractually forced to show you this slide, which is, this is Gartner's annual comparison. For those of you guys who don't know, this is really, I think, Gartner says this is used very infrequently by actual customers and users and is mostly used by the vendors to flex on each other. And given that I was responsible for building the AWS stack and the Google stack, this was a particularly exciting flex for me. But so with that, let's dive in. So our goal at Databricks is to help democratize data and AI. And that goal has changed significantly over just the last 2 or 3 years, as I'm sure you can all imagine, with agentic AI becoming more and more of a powerful force in the industry. About 3 years ago, our CEO, or I should say, just about 3 years ago, a little less, about 2.5 years ago, our CEO actually got up on stage at our annual conference and said, in the future, you're just going to use natural language to power Databricks and to use Databricks. And while we're not there today yet, today on Databricks, you can build pipelines with natural language and jobs with natural language. You can build, you can do text to SQL. You can now do text to machine learning. You can now do text to agent. You can do text to visualization. So while you can't do kind of text to all of Databricks, you can get pretty close with some of the capabilities. And we'll talk about some of those today. This is Databricks, by the way, more or less. At the lowest level, we have your data in open formats, in cheap blob storage. On top of that, we have Unity Catalog, designed not only to govern and access control that data layer, but also designed to really be the brain and the kind of metadata collection system to be able to power some really cool capabilities, which we'll talk about shortly. Then you have AgentBricks, our ability to orchestrate and build agents on top of all of this. And then you have a series of engines, right? AI/BI, our business intelligence capabilities, right? Our apps capabilities, Lakeflow, our pipelining capabilities, Lakehouse, our data warehouse capabilities, and Lakebase, our new OLTP capabilities. I don't know about all of you, but in my experience, every data professional spent some amount of time early in their career where they said, oh yeah, I'll just go get the information out of the data warehouse. And they go and they look and they're like, hey, the information's not in the data warehouse. And someone smart in the company said, yeah, it's in the database. And you go, wait a minute, there's two? Why? And OLAP and OLTP, and we all just nod and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Those should be separate. But no, they shouldn't be, right? They should hopefully in the fullness of time be one thing. And so, it's with that we're really excited about some of those capabilities. So today we're really going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about Unity Catalog for a hot second. We're going to talk about AI, BI, and some of the natural language capabilities we've brought into that, because those end up being really important to some of our agentic capabilities. And then we'll dive into agent bricks and what it means to build an agent with agent bricks and how and why that's different from building agents, maybe using other platforms or other tools. So this is how I think about the AI opportunity sitting in front of all of us right now, is how do I simplify the creation for you of high-quality AI apps and agents on your data, right? And we're very clear about what we mean by high quality, right? What we mean is we want it to be accurate and secure enough that you could implement it in the path of risk, right? Either financial risk, maybe in an internal workflow, or maybe externally in reputational risk as you expose it to your customers or your users, right? This is really a different goal, right? Most of my competitors will say, we want to simplify the creation of these systems. We want to give you one-click RAG, right? But really, and that's great. And listen, if what you're trying to build is a little personal productivity hack for you and your colleagues, those are great tools. But we see the problem slightly differently, which is if you were to go deploy an agent into the path of risk, either externally facing or into some sort of internal workflow that at some point you hope to be hands off the wheel and allow it just to run autonomously. If you expect to be able to deploy an agent into those environments, your CFO is going to have questions, right? Your CFO is going to ask two things, right? They're going to ask if you can govern this thing, and by govern, I don't just mean access management. I don't just mean, who can call the agent. I mean, I do mean who can call the agent, but I also mean what precisely is the agent capable of doing at every intermediate step, right? What are all the systems it has access to? So what's it capable of, and what is it doing? What's your strategy for monitoring and logging and ensuring that it's doing what you thought it would, right? Fundamentally, can you control it, right? So the first thing your CFO is going to want to know is, can you control it? And the second thing they're going to want to know is it any good? Does it work, right? And, today, more than 85% of agents are vibe tested, right? So, I build an agent, and then I sit there and I go, yeah, seems to work pretty good, right? Which is fine, maybe not. But, if I said to you, hey, we're going to give up on unit testing for all our computer science from here on out. We're just going to have you try the happy path, see if it works well, and then just deploy it, right? Most of us would never tolerate that. Or maybe we would, but our bosses might not. But fundamentally, if you're going to go deploy these things, you need to know whether or not they work, right? I wouldn't build you a forecast, for a sales forecast, and then say, you say, oh, how accurate is it? And I go, I don't know, it's pretty good, isn't it? Right? No, I would tell you the R-square or the AUC or some other measure of fit. Well, here, we want to give you that same opportunity, that ability to, using evaluation, drive these things to a point where they can be deployed in the path of risk and where you can communicate their performance quantitatively to your colleagues and others, right? So let's start with Unity Catalog and a quick view on Unity Catalog. Why Unity Catalog is important. Well, I talked a minute ago about the fact that not only do I want to govern access to this agent, I actually want to govern every single thing this agent does. If this agent looks at data, I want to know that. If this agent calls an API, I want to know that. I want to know what it's capable of doing and what it did on every single time it was used, right? And so Unity Catalog does that, right? Not only does Unity Catalog govern tables, it governs unstructured data. It governs embeddings, right? It governs tools. It governs API calls, right? It can govern all of these capabilities. And when I say govern, not only can it control who can go do those things, but it can log every time they're done, right? And recently, I should say, it can govern prompts. It can govern Gen AI models and the access to those models. And then most recently, we announced it can govern MCP servers. So you can stand up a managed MCP server inside Databricks and have any of the Databricks assets, right? Any of the queries or the text-to-SQL genie rooms or the APIs in there or the tools you've built or the queries you've built. All of those can be represented behind a MCP server that then your agents can call and access those artifacts within Databricks. But that's not it, because we don't just want to be able to govern the agents that you build on Databricks. If we gave you the opportunity to govern just the models on Databricks, then everywhere you build models, you would have to have a separate view of how to govern and access control and monitor them there. So instead, what we've done is we've made it so you can take external MCP servers. Maybe you have an MCP server that's part of a SaaS system. Maybe you have an MCP server that someone else in a different department built, right? You can register those MCP servers inside Unity Catalog, and now anything that you want your agent to go and access can be accessed, even if it's a separate SaaS system. Right? Those APIs or that MCP server can be packaged up, registered inside Databricks, and now your agent, instead of going off and calling that MCP server, will call it through Databricks and will be able to log and monitor every single thing it does. Right? This is really, not long after the pandemic struck, I had a meeting with the head of trust and safety at one of the world's largest retailers. And I said to her, hey, when the pandemic struck and all the human behavioral models went bananas because we all thought that toilet paper was more valuable than gold, like how on earth did you prioritize which models to retrain when? And she kind of sheepishly smiled at me and said, Craig, you think we know where all our models are? Right? There's some laughter, some uncomfortable laughter in the room, right? If that model that was built was some forecast for used, mystery books, maybe I don't care. But if that model had access to APIs, if that model could take actions on behalf of my company, then not monitoring it very closely and knowing exactly what it's doing starts to become a liability, right? And so that's why Unity Catalog is central to this, is it can become that hub of governance and monitoring, not just of the agent itself, but of all of the different things these agents might want to touch. Now, monitoring is the second half of this, right? Now, we run monitoring not only for classical things like tokens and latency and all of these kinds of things, but we'll actually run LLM judges as a part of the monitor so that you can measure things like ongoing correctness, right? Or you can start looking through your logs to see, hey, are there particular subject matters that I tend to get wrong more than other subject matters, right? And this can become a way in which you can really start to surgically go after the performance of your system, right? So that's a quick overview of why Unity Catalog is so important to all of this. Now I want to dive into AI BI. And you can really think about agents on Databricks in two ways. One is we're building a bunch of agents to make it so that you can use Databricks more easily. The second is we're building tools so that you can build agents more effectively. And so I wanted to talk for a minute about AI BI because it's really central to some of the agents that we've been building that are getting reused when people build agents themselves. First of all, we've seen massive user growth, 500% year-over-year growth. And by the way, this AI BI capability, these capabilities, they're, can't say free, but they just cost you the cost of the queries, right? They don't cost you extra. You don't have to go get a separate contract to use this or an addendum or anything. You can just start using it, right? That's part of what's driven this growth. It allows you to have text to visualization. You can just say, hey, show me the sales by region over the last 6 months, broken down by product or something along those lines, and you'll get a dashboard, and then you can filter this dashboard, move these around, kind of do all the things you would expect in a modern BI tool, but you've created the entire thing with natural language, right? Now, we all know, I'm saying we because I'm guessing other data professionals in the room, that when an executive comes to you and says, hey, can you build me a dashboard? That's a rough day. Because not only are you building a dashboard, but you are now answering an unlimited number of deep dive questions about that dashboard, right? Dashboards don't create answers. Dashboards create more questions, right? Where people are constantly saying, oh yeah, sales were up. Why were they up? Sales were down. Why were they down? Right? All of these questions. When I was at Amazon, we used to joke that, hey, I want to know what sales were. And as soon as you told them, they were like, I meant for blue things, right? And so how do you get ahead of that? Well, not only can you use natural language to build these visualizations, you can start talking to your data. You can ask questions of your data, right? You can go in and just start saying, hey, what was it that drove sales? I will tell you that this text-to-SQL, or this text-to-SQL capability, or Genie rooms, as you'll often hear it called, or Genie spaces, it has a remarkable capability that's recently been announced, which is it has a deep research capability attached to it now. So the deep research capability won't just answer questions. I mean, it will answer questions about the data, but it'll start to answer much more complex questions. Hey, describe to me where the most efficient places in my sales funnel would be for me to invest incremental marketing dollars, right? And it will go through, it'll build a plan for how it would go after this problem. It'll check that plan with you, and then it'll start running the queries it needs to across all of your tables in order to start informing that plan. I had an amazing moment with a customer just 2 weeks ago where he said they had a whole bunch of supply chain data in here. And he asked it for some help understanding what some of the supply chain costs and risks would be on some of their trans-Pacific transportation routes. He hit enter. It came up with a plan. He waited. And then it stopped. And it said, hey, I don't have all the data I need to do this. I need you to give me access to another table. And I say that because that's a huge leap for this technology. For this technology, and we're seeing this both in our system as well as in some of the foundation models, that they're just not making stuff up at quite the rate they were back when we were talking about GPT 3.5 and what have you, right? We can it's starting to get to a place where we can, if we're careful, we can start building that trust a lot more effectively. And then finally, in private preview right now, we have a data science agent. Now, I'll tell you that on that last slide, that text-to-SQL deep dive capability, that one hit home for me. Because that was my first job in tech, I was the guy who wrote really good SQL who could answer the questions that the VP had. And I could answer them quickly and effectively, and that got me a lot of credibility and notoriety from the VP, which was great. That's now being done by the agent. Well, now we have a data science agent. This data science agent will help you analyze data, help you determine what features might be useful for predicting a problem, and then we'll actually go and help you train the model, right? We want to make it so that you could have text to machine learning model. We're not there yet. Now it's a collaborative back and forth with you and the system. But we're really excited about some of the things we're seeing from this already. And my guess is that by next time this year, we'll be sitting there saying like, hey, this is as easy as asking a question of your data. Maybe a year and a half, we'll see. And then lastly, we have a whole series of SQL capabilities that can be used to go and run Gen AI, right? Things like AI parse document, which you'll hear about very shortly. AI query. So AI query allows you to run any arbitrary prompt as part of a query. So maybe you have a table that you want to score every row of that table, or you want to summarize every blurb in that table or something like that. That can easily be done with a single line of SQL at this point. So now we move into the meat of it, into agent bricks, into this new way of thinking about building agents, this really evaluation-centric way of building agents. It's hard to build AI agents today. We know this. We know a lot of companies will come to us and say, hey, we've tried, we've struggled, we're having a hard time. It's even harder to build high-quality AI agents, right? And so when we think about quality, it comes down to evaluation. And this is just a quick view of our eval stack. But the key to this eval system So we built this about a year before we built AgentBricks. And the key to this eval system was, see those little red circles? Those little red circles are where the judges failed that line in the eval. And the key is that if you click on one of those little red circles, you don't just you get a description of why it failed. And you get, hey, here's why we think it failed. Here's the input and the output at the specific step of the agent that we saw that we believe failed. And most importantly, here's what you should go do to fix it. Right? As soon as we had that concept of here's what you should go do to fix it, everything changed. And the reason everything changed is it allowed us to build AgentBricks. Now, what is AgentBricks? Well, in the market today, you can kind of think about cost or about complexity versus quality. And what we have in the market today is we have these no-code builders, right? Where, hey, they're super easy to use, and they produce kind of static, low-quality agents, right? And you kind of have to put up with whatever they produced. And they're great, by the way. If what you're doing is creating a system that prioritizes your emails and writes you a summary of all your emails from last night, great. Go for it. But if you're wanting to put something in the path of risk, you need something better. And so we have these complex, very complex kind of DIY agents that are very high quality, right? We can tune them and continue to tune them until we get the quality we want, but they're really complex and difficult to build. Ultimately, our goal with AgentBricks is the impossible in between. We want to make it easy for high quality. We want to make it so that you can very quickly and very easily spin up an agent that performs or that you can then tune until you can get it to perform at kind of whatever your exit criteria is for your use case, right? Evaluation is difficult, so we immediately went after that. There's too many knobs. And when I say there's too many knobs, there's actually not a lot of knobs. The problem is that the state-of-the-art methods for building these agents is changing every 2 to 8 weeks, depending on what kind of agent you're building. So, what we see is usually the people who are building these agents are app developers. And what we see is they come in and they do a great job of building an agent, but they may not be up on what the latest research was released last month. And so what AgentBricks is designed to do is it's designed to take that latest research and those latest techniques and bring them into the system, right? And then so that you don't have to worry about the knobs. You don't have to worry about how you're going to structure your vector search queries, because we'll just take care of that for you. And then finally, there's a trade-off of cost versus quality. We all know that Gen AI can be a costly endeavor, right? And so having the ability to be really deliberate about how I'm going to spend and how I'm going to trade off cost versus quality is something that's really important if you're all of a sudden going to put something in a maybe an externally facing capacity where you could end up with, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe if you're lucky, hundreds of thousands or millions of queries, right? And so with that, we have a series of Databricks, of AgentBricks, and those AgentBricks are really designed as kind of templated patterns that you can come in and start using, right? Hey, you need basically a RAG system or a knowledge assistant? Great. Grab the knowledge assistant agent brick and you're off to the races. Now, we start with information extraction. Information extraction takes your unstructured documents. Maybe you've got receipts. Maybe you've got shipping documents. Maybe you've got contracts, right? It takes those and breaks them into structured data. Literally, you go upload your documents, and then into AgentBricks, it identifies the schema, says, here's all the fields I'm going to pull out of these documents, describes to you each field, and then you have a choice. Do you want to keep that field? Do you want to erase it? Is it important? Is it not? Do you want to add other fields and describe them for us, right? And then we're off to the races. Now, with all of the AgentBricks, the idea is that once you've built it, unfortunately, you're not done. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to start giving you examples. And we're going to start asking you for examples of, hey, ask me a question that you would expect it to be able to answer. Or here's some synthetic questions I would expect it to be able to answer. What do you think of these responses? And you'll sit there and go, well, 1, 2, and 3 are good. 4 is not so good, and 5 is a train wreck. And so we'll sit there, and as soon as you give us that feedback, we're going to go tune the system. And then come back to you and say, hey, let's try another few examples. And we're going to keep doing that back and forth with you until it gets to a point where you're really excited and satisfied by the outputs, right? And so making it really easy to just kind of take those documents and build them into structured data. Knowledge Assistant, same idea except for RAG. So you have a corpus of text that you want to make searchable and you want to be able to answer questions about that text and what have you. Great. Upload the text into Databricks. Start to engage with the system on asking it questions and it giving you responses so that you can give it feedback. And by the way, when you say 1, 2, and 3 are good, 4 needs work, and 5 is a train wreck, we're actually going to ask you, why are 4 and 5 bad? And we're not just going to go and guess. You're going to tell us, hey, 4 is using outdated information, and 5, it totally ignored one of the policies we have, right? And we can take that feedback and we can drive that direct feedback back into the system, right? We can more easily reason over our knowledge, right? Automatic vector search creation and optimization. All you have to do is upload the data and then talk to us for a while about whether or not the responses are responses you're excited by. And then multi-agent supervisor. This one to me is the most exciting one. Multi-agent supervisor takes a series of other agents, MCP servers, tools, other capabilities, and is able to work large, kind of longer running workflows over these MCP servers, tools, and other agents, right? Really allowing you to build some pretty remarkable capabilities, which we'll see here very shortly, right? You can see here, being able to talk over both data and both structured and unstructured data, right? Can I ask questions of both my query or both my unstructured data as well as my policies and manuals, right? Can I build tools so that I can drive higher levels of determinism in my agent, right? And then ultimately we have the ability for you to code your own agent as well, and the ability for you to kind of dive in and use, all of the most popular libraries and what have you to go build your own agent if you prefer to do that. So the good news is we're seeing some extraordinarily high quality. This is a comparison to 2 of the clouds, neither of which we are representing here today. And so you can see how we were able to beat this blue cloud and this rainbow cloud on in their efforts on RAG. And that not only does our performance beat them because we have some of those latest techniques built in, but our performance continues to improve as we keep that continuous learning loop going, right? So how are we able to do this, right? Let's say you're building that classic kind of, HR chatbot with, hey, I want it to answer all of my HR policies. And someone asks a question about vacation time, and you say, hey, that's the wrong answer. Wait, that's before we changed the policy back in May of 2020. So you tell the system, hey, I want you to ignore all data before May of 2020. So the system goes in, and it does that. It changes what's available in the vector search. It adds parameters to all of the tool calling. It builds LLM judges to make sure that moving forward, we measure any time we pull data from before then, right? So that feedback we're actually going to use to build judges to ensure that we meet it, and then it's going to re-optimize the entire workflow, right? This is a huge step in steerability. I would argue that in a year, probably in a year, maybe a year and a half, depending on the level of urgency, I think this is the product that all of the major vendors are going to be competing with. Right? How can I use natural language to both build and tune my agent? Right? That's the product that we all are looking for and that we all want. And so really excited to be able to deliver that to you today in beta. With that, I'm going to invite Nick up to give us a quick demo of all of this.
Thank you, Craig. That is, yeah, for sure. It won't be the last time he's up, so you can still get him for Q&A at the end, but he deserves a round of applause for sure. All right, so I'm going to take you through a whirlwind tour of a lot of what you just saw. But to kind of tee it up, who here is excited to go home after reInvent and uncrumple all your receipts and go start submitting your expense reports? Show of hands. All right, security. No, I'm kidding. So I'm going to use that as an excuse to kind of show you how I built this end-to-end on Databricks, starting from I literally took a picture of my receipts and all the way to the end to where I have something submitted and approved. So we're actually going to start off, and Craig alluded to this a little bit, but Unity Catalog really is the foundation of everything across Databricks. Whether it's AI, whether it's our ETL, everything both starts and ends in Unity Catalog. And so this demo is also going to start in Unity Catalog. Unity Catalog can store tables, volumes, functions, all sorts of things. And so what you're looking at is a Unity Catalog volume that I've uploaded all of my receipts into. So you can see I click in, it'll give me a nice preview as long as the internet's a little snappy. Yeah, cool, okay. So you'll see, not even a great picture, right? It's like kind of at a weird angle. Now, if I want to start doing something with this, I need to actually extract all the information out of this receipt. Now, a few years ago, that might have been pretty challenging, but today, especially using Agentbricks, it's super easy. So the first thing I'm going to do over here on the bottom left, I'm going to click into Agents. And that's going to take us to our Agentbricks page. Now, you'll see there are a lot of them, and we're actually going to touch, I think, every single one of them through here. But we're going to start off with information extraction. And here you'll see there's two buttons. We've got Use PDFs, and then we've got Build. And that's generally because we're going to take a little bit of a two-step process. So first, we need to take from images and get the data from images into an actual table. So for this, we can click Use PDFs. It's as easy as pointing it to a volume, like you just saw. Here's all my receipts. Can I confirm? And then I just tell it where I want it stored. I give it my destination table. I can rename it. I've already run this before, you know, in the interest of time. And so if I were to hit Start Import, what you're going to see is this. You're going to get now your raw parse data. This is what the information extraction was able to kind of pull out of that image. And then you're going to get this kind of semi-structured data, right? You've got a block of text. It's got the information that was in that receipt, but it's not in a really robust format that you can really reliably start building on top of. So if we go back to our agent page, that's when we would click this Build button. So what Build is going to take us to is actually creating the second part of this information extraction agent. So we're going to point it to this table. That's the output of the one we just saw. We're going to tell it where the text is, and it'll actually auto-generate the sample of what it thinks that you want to actually extract out of this data. Now, when you hit Create Agent, what it's going to do is it's actually going to go through a couple of them, and it's going to extract what it assumed you wanted. And on the right-hand side, it's going to give you a whole bunch of definitions for the values that it extracted. You can now go and tweak these. If you say, you know what, location for me needs to be only the city, right? I don't need to know the exact restaurant. And so you can kind of come in here and tweak. And then the really cool part is you can add new fields. For example, if you might need to know the number of desserts, you can actually add a totally new field. You can describe what is in that field. And this might be a little bit foreshadowing later, but it will figure out how to pull that data using the examples you gave. Now, going back to what Craig said about evaluations, how do you know that this extraction is working? How do you know that the fields you wanted to pull are actually being pulled? We will automatically build benchmarks for you. And these benchmarks will look at all of your extractions, and it'll use LLMs as judges to tell, hey, this sample output normally looks like this. I'll give you an example for this one that failed for match. It says, look, the ground truth example names the restaurant name along with the city, but this prediction only has a city and state. So now I can go and figure out, oh, okay, cool. I need to go update my description because it doesn't know what exactly I want it to give me. I want just a city and state. Once you're happy, you can click this Optimize button, and I did promise that we were going to make your agents less expensive, and I'll show you what the output of that looks like. Once you actually run the optimization, it'll go away for an hour or so, and it'll run a whole bunch of different techniques in order to take your samples that you gave it and the kind of relatively big and high quality model and fine-tune that down to a way more efficient model while keeping the quality the same. So you see that our throughput went up massively and our quality didn't even drop. So it's much less expensive to run, and now you can actually run this on huge sets of data. So now we've extracted this data, right? We went from on the left, where we had this kind of semi-structured block of text, to now this beautiful structured JSON on the right. And now we've got all of our receipts nicely extracted, and we can start figuring out how to submit these things. Now, in order to do that, we're going to tab over here to Unity Catalog again. Now, I said earlier, right, Unity Catalog, it holds a lot of different things. So if I go to volumes, you see that we've got our receipts. That's where we uploaded all of our receipts. We've got travel policies. That's going to come in handy later. We've got some tables. This is where we've parsed those receipts out into, and it's also where the information extraction agent is dumping the final beautiful JSON. And we've also got functions. So functions can be either Python or SQL. You define them, you register them into Unity Catalog, and now what it lets you do is really easily bind these functions to your agents so that your agents can call them with proper authentication thanks to Unity Catalog. Just so you can kind of take a look at what these are, they can be as simple as this. So this is just a simple SQL query, and all it's doing is it's grabbing the data from both my receipts parse table and the information extraction agent. So now what we can do, we're going to go right back to agents, and we're going to use also my personal favorite agent, the multi-agent supervisor. We've got data, we've got some functions that do stuff with that data. We want an agent to actually do this all for us. So we can hit build, and now we can start piecing together this agent. Now, I ran this in the hallway like 30 minutes ago, just so we don't have to wait here. But I want to show you first the configuration of the agent. So on the left-hand side, we've given it a really light description. It helps users process expenses. And then we've added 2 sub-agents. These are just the 2 Unity Catalog functions that I showed you earlier. They allow this agent to retrieve the parse data that we looked at in the information extraction, and they allow it to hit your expense API, whatever company you might use, in order to actually send the payload off to your expense agency for approval. So now we can tell it, hey, can you retrieve and summarize my dinner expenses from Las Vegas? So it will go through, it calls that first function, get uploaded expenses. It'll give you a nice, very clean summary. Hey, you spent about $200 on dinners. Awesome. So I said, hey, can we go ahead and submit these, right? Naively, I thought that in just about 10 minutes I had nailed this. So I'm like, all right, we're good to go. Yeah, go ahead and submit them. And it said, sure, absolutely. Goes ahead, it knows how to do it, right? And another thing that's kind of hard to show here, but in those functions, it actually gives a lot of descriptive kind of definitions of what that function does. AgentBricks will automatically bring that in thanks to Unity Catalog, so it just knows how to use these functions really well. So it goes ahead, it submits them, and it tells me, hey, you're all good. All 3 of your expenses are in. Cool. Let's fast forward a week, right? All of a sudden, I get my expense deposited in my account, and I'm like, that seems a lot less than I spent. So I go, and I'm like, I need to go figure out what happened. So I'm going to go into Genie. Now, Genie is our text-to-SQL solution, and I'm going to bring in one of my tables, historical expenses. So this is where I'm pulling from my expense agency just to see kind of what was submitted and what happened with it. And so now I can actually ask it, hey, can you show me if any of my recent expenses were rejected? And so it will do its analysis, as Craig showed earlier. It'll even give you the game plan and the reasoning that it used. And it came back and it said, hey, you have 2 recent expenses that were rejected. Both were declined due to the policy on desserts, right? So if we look over here, rejection reason, whoa, more than 1 dessert per dinner violates the travel and expense policy. And I was a naughty boy in Vegas. I was getting double desserts. So let's fix that. Now, it wasn't the agent's fault. I just didn't give it enough context, right? It didn't know what the travel policy was. I never told it. So now we're going to go back into AgentBricks, and we're going to use our Knowledge Assistant. So if you go into Knowledge Assistant, you'll see we've made a very, very simple one. We gave it a description. It's meant to help users submit valid expense reports. And all we've done is pointed it to our policy documentation, again, in that Unity Catalog volume. It figures out how to parse that PDF, and now I can actually ask it directly, hey, can you give me a summary of why I can't get 2 desserts at dinner? And if it seems like I'm a little upset about it, trust your instincts. So you'll see it'll even tell you what it's thinking. It'll pull all the information that it needs from our policy. And one thing that's really cool is it'll even come with receipts. So you can actually look to see exactly what it referenced within our policy in case you want to double check that it did everything correctly. Or if you want to copy and paste it and send a mean message on Slack asking somebody why this exists. Now, because we have this knowledge assistant, we can go back into our multi-agent supervisor, right? And now we're going to add this knowledge assistant as another sub-agent that it can call. And while we're at it, so here you'll see that this one has a little bit more, right? We've got our travel expense agent. This is our knowledge assistant. We can also add that Genie space that we use to figure out if the expense was valid or not. So now our agent can call Genie to retrieve data. And then we still kept our original 2 functions so we can still pull and submit our expenses. So now, when we ask it, hey, can you retrieve any rejected expenses from Vegas? It will go through and it's going to pass that off to Genie just like I did. It's going to get the 2 expenses back that were declined. It's going to tell you why they were declined. And then I said, all right, can we go ahead and fix these by removing the less expensive dessert, recalculating the totals? Sure. It goes, it checks with our travel assistant to make sure that we're following the policies correctly. We're just going to kind of skip through this. It's telling you, hey, all right, we applied these corrections. We resubmitted. And then at the end, it'll tell you, hey, look, corrected amounts are going to be a little bit less, right? But now they're actually going to pass. And so I've submitted them. And then at the end, I can actually ask, hey, can you give me a detailed breakdown of my Las Vegas expenses to my Genie room? It can go, it can pull all of the expenses that I've submitted, tell me that I had a total of 3 dinners approved in Las Vegas, all categorized as meals. Now I'm feeling much better, but I'm not done. There's one more thing I want to do. What happens if I share this and now the next person comes along? They're going to run into the same issue I did. So what I can actually do is I can go to improve quality. And I can start a labeling session. Now what I can do is I can tell it a question, hey, can you process a dinner expense that has 2 desserts? Now the reason I'm doing this is because now I can give it guidelines. I can tell it, whenever anything similar to this is asked, this is what you need to do. You need to remove the less expensive dessert and recalculate the totals before submitting. So now I've not only fixed the problem for myself, but I've improved the agent for anyone that comes along. And you can imagine that as you start scaling these agents, you can have more and more people doing these review sessions. You can bring in your subject matter experts, and you can easily merge all of that into your agent. And I have written no code doing this whole thing. Now, obviously, I do need to know how JSON works, so it's not a totally no-code solution, but it makes it so you can iterate so much faster. So with that, I think it's time to hand it off to Vikram and Marcos from Condé Nast, who are going to show us all the awesome things that they've been doing.
Can everyone hear me? Yes, great, fantastic. I'm Vikram, this is Marcos. And thank you, Craig and Nico, for having us. And to my incredible account team, thank you, Naseem, for having us here as well. So, you've heard Craig talk a lot about how text-to-SQL empowers businesses. So we had a similar problem. So earlier this year, my CEO came to me and said, look, you built this incredible data platform on Databricks. Why is it that I cannot do self-serve or self-service myself, right? So we set about trying to figure out, can we put text-to-SQL to work in our specific use case? So that's the objective. And that is the journey that we want to talk about. But before we get there, we want to talk a little bit about who we are as Condé Nast. We are a global media powerhouse. You would definitely know us through our brands. Vogue, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, Wired, for those of you who are looking at tech deals over the weekend. Condé Nast Traveler, if you're into food, obviously you're looking at Bon Appetit, and others. We operate in 12 countries. We are 22 global brands. We went through an interesting transformation in 2019. So prior to 2019, we were actually 2 separate operating companies. There was Condé Nast US, and then there was Condé Nast in the rest of the world. And the two of them didn't share anything in terms of process, in terms of technology. So in 2019, this was prior to me joining Condé Nast, somebody made the decision, look, we're going to unify everything and we're going to become one global company. At that point, 70% of our revenue came from print. It was only 30% digital. So we started the unification process, and it was more than just the data platforms. It was a total transformation of our entire system and our entire technology ecosystem. And today, our revenue is 70% digital and 30% print. So in about 5 to 6 years, we have actually reversed where our money comes from. We support multiple revenue streams, whether it's commercial advertising, whether it is subscriptions. We do live events. We do puzzles and games. So our product line is very, very broad. So what I'm literally trying to tell you here is the problem that we were trying to solve with our data strategy was pretty vast. We needed to adapt that data strategy or future-proof our data strategy so we could evolve the data strategy to keep to enable the business as it evolved. So 2020, that's our data landscape. It's completely decentralized, obviously. We lacked any form of data governance, privacy, data lineage, business semantics, you name it. I mean, none of it really existed. It was purely in its infancy at that point, right? In fact, we relied fairly heavily on spreadsheet-driven process if you wanted to get insights or KPIs about how our brands were performing globally. 2020, we made a strategic decision to partner with Databricks, and they've been a tremendous partner for us. We remediated a lot of the challenges that I laid out previously. And what you're seeing today is a centralized data lakehouse where we have connected all of our data sources. But really what this enables us to think about is how do we put this data to use, right? How do we drive insights? How do we drive, how do we report on KPIs? But more importantly, it has enabled us to build data products on top of this as we think about a customer 360, our identity spine, and how do we activate both of those, right? Those are very important for us. How do we plug AI and machine learning into this? How do we drive hyper-personalized audience experiences? How do we drive experimentation? All of this is again, built on top of the Databricks foundations that Craig spoke about just a few minutes ago. But there's more to it, right? So this year, again, I was asked, hey, look, what's the AI strategy? What are we doing about AI? And I think that's a question that everybody's been asking. An answer, and really maybe I'll try and explain this diagram a little bit so that it makes sense. We ended up building our centralized data warehouse, so you could see that in the orange. We've started to do things on top of that, right? But on the x-axis, as you look at how we want to democratize our data, how we want everybody to use the data that's sitting within the lakehouse as close to the lakehouse as possible, we have a little bit of way to go in that journey. And the same thing with activation. But the point that we also want to make here is that as we transformed as the business transformed, and as we transformed and brought in all of our data sources into the lakehouse, we went through a fundamental shift in a variety of areas, and that changed how our KPIs were constructed, right? At the end of the day, that was important. We had to build trust, and that was important. So maybe the point I'm trying to make here is if you don't have trusted data, if you don't have a ground truth for your data, your AI strategy is not going to be successful as it scales. It may work for a couple of use cases, but think long and hard about your AI strategy independent of a data strategy. And this is our learning that we have taken from this journey. As I said previously, we have multiple brands, multiple markets, different revenue lines. Every brand chooses to monetize its revenue differently. even within a specific brand, sometimes the brand will do something a little bit different. So as an example, Vogue as an app will have a different monetization strategy, excuse me, than say Vogue.com. So when we think about all of that, our data happens to be pretty dynamic. It's very, very disparate and diverse, and it's pretty complicated. The volume is fairly high as well. We support both real-time and batch, as I said. And of course, we have leveraged everything that the Lakehouse offers to us. We've centered around the medallion architecture. We use the Unity catalog heavily for governance and everything else that comes with the Unity catalog.
And when you look at Condé Nast and how our business areas are organized, thank you. You're going to see that each of the areas, they have their own analytics team. They have independence, ownership, and they have like a deep functional knowledge. And what we questioned ourselves was, how can we enable collaboration and use collaboration of these teams so we can drive value faster? And we created like what we call a federated collaboration strategy with them. So we partner with the business areas, with the analytics teams. They keep their independence, autonomy, speed, and deep functional knowledge, but we try to create like a set of unifying tools, frameworks, and data sets that it can use and move faster. We work with them to unify also the semantic of what they're doing, data quality frameworks, and other things like that. And we move that on, so the areas are exploring data within Databricks. They are playing with it. And then we receive the question, okay, how do we do to democratize our data? And this is where we start keeping the same philosophy so they can build and they can enable. We enable and empower them to create their own text-to-SQL agents. So each of these independent areas started creating their text-to-SQL agents and rolling that out for their stakeholders. So we have like executives asking questions to the data, having their charts and playing with it, and learning a lot and changing a little bit the culture. After you do that, so the question is, okay, we look at the log of questions, we see that a few questions, they cannot be answered, or they cannot be answered by one specific agent. And how do we connect these agents? And this is where we got to our super agent, or our multi-agent supervisor. That's a Databricks app connected to AgentBricks that uses the different agents of the agent bricks that defines the multi-agent supervisor, defines which agents they are going to use, get to the answers, and get back with the results. We also connect to Alation, that's our catalog tool, using instructions and judgment and guardrails on top of the multi-agent supervisor. And that's usually synced with Unity. So now, if an executive wants to access our data, they go to the Databricks app, put their questions, AgentBricks decides which agents to engage, we get the answer, and we go back. Very nice in the PowerPoint, but Vikram is going to show us a little bit like how that works in real life. Yes.
Everyone can still hear me. So, all right, great. We start with the app screen, and I think Nicholas pointed out how to build apps, so I'm not going to get into this. And again, for the sake of brevity, we've actually gone through and done the work here, so I'm just going to walk through this very quickly. So, as I said, we have multiple brands. Every brand has different revenue strategies. We have subscription brands, and in this case, we are going to talk about how the subscription brands are performing versus what is expected, as you can see at the prompt at the very top there. Not sure. Yeah, there we go. Wonder if I should zoom in or if everyone's okay. And that is the prompt. And that is then analyzed by the subscription. So maybe a little bit of insight into how the agents themselves are built. Subscription includes everything that you want to know about the brand, and it includes information such as the channels that the consumers came in on. So, and that's kind of important as we go through the demo. The second agent that we have speaks about audience, and audience includes how our audience is consuming our content, but it doesn't necessarily talk about subscriptions or anything revenue specific. So when we run that, it runs through, and it comes back with the following response, right? It provides some insight into how the site is actually performing, and in this case, it's focused on Wired, and it's saying, look, Wired actually added 70,000 site subscriptions, but in 2025, we've more than doubled it. I do want to caution everybody, this is not real data, this is demo data. We are not allowed to share our revenue and subscription numbers publicly. We are a privately held company. So it's important for us to go a little bit further. So the New Yorker happens to be yet another subscription brand. So again, I went back to the agents and said, look, tell me how my top two brands, subscription brands are doing. And now it comes back and says, okay, the New Yorker actually has, obviously it has more subscribers. It has about 1 million, give or take. That's generally public knowledge, so I'm just sharing that. But then it starts to get into the comparison between the brands, right? So here it's talking about, yeah, sure, the absolute numbers for the New Yorker are higher, but Wired shows more growth, right? All of this is like, yeah, sure. I mean, you can get all of this via any sort of dashboard, et cetera, right? That's great. But now let's get in a little bit deeper. And we are going to ask you the question, what is driving Wired's year-to-year growth inside subscriptions, right? So again, for the sake of brevity, I've already gone ahead and run it. And now it comes back and says, look, you want to look at what the key growth drivers are. And you remember I shared a little bit about a brand and how traffic gets to our properties, right? And this says, look, the top contributing channels happen to be social media. We see a lot of growth there. Direct traffic, happy to explain these terms, but search, it's generally okay, it's doing fine. But new channels have started to emerge, and this is very true for for media and entertainment in general. This could be driven off of newsletters and other subscriptions, but AI traffic has started to add a little bit of volume, and it's driving a few more subscriptions. Now we want to get a little bit deeper into the channel mix. So fine, you've told me that, hey, you're getting a lot of traffic from social media. That's great. But what specifically within social media? And that's where we come back with the following, right? So I didn't necessarily speak about conversion rates, but I'm again, happy to get into all of these, but these are very specific to media and entertainment. So it says, look, search decreased significantly. Direct traffic increase, social grew, strategic referral grew, new channels have come in, and then it starts talking about conversion rate performance, right? Social has has shown the most improvement. Direct traffic for those who are uninitiated with media and entertainment terms is when you type the actual page or the URL, and search is, you go to Bing or Google, and that's really what you're doing. But the notable declines are email, right? Okay, so we're doing something wrong with our newsletter strategy. Now, whether we should be doing more, maybe it's a content thing, maybe it's not a content thing, hard to tell, again, right? Display, not doing that great either. Google Discover, again, right? So it provides us with a neat little summary of, hey, look, we are starting to see shifts in the way the traffic is consuming our audience. So now if you're the CEO of the company and you're looking at this, you're going, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now you can start talking to the rest of your leadership team about what the strategy here needs to be, what we should be focusing on, and what we should be spending our dollars on. I don't know how much time we have. We have just about a minute, so continue on. Yeah, so we should, why don't you wrap up with the...
Okay, can we go back?
Yeah.
Cool. And what have we learned in this journey? One thing is that what we probably are listening everywhere, that if you don't have good data, you're not going to have good results. But be open, because you can create curated data sets and plug in your text-to-SQL on top of the curated data sets, and also be aware that you may need to prepare those data sets to work with text-to-SQL. On the user questions, imagine that the agent is going to, if you're using text-to-SQL, is going to provide SQL outputs for your question. So if you ask something that could not be answered by a SQL, you're not going to get the answer. And when you are building the multi-agent, remember that you can add instructions and guardrails to that layer. We forgot, so the way we know that all the data is tweaked is because we added the instructions for the multi-agent, and the multi-agent applies that to all of the data. Some of the user questions, they are not going to be, they require additional training or guardrails, so you can put an instruction saying, like, if you don't have complete data, do not answer to the question. When you're building advanced analytics, you may need additional tables and functions. And check when you have a new use case if it's going to be like an optimal solution to use text-to-SQL, or if you need something different. And the final one, so what we have seen. With this, we increase a lot time to value. So each of the individual groups are building their own agents, improving their own agents, and moving super fast. We have senior executives accessing our data and our agents. And we look at the logs, we understand what's not being answered, and we use that as an input to new requirements. So we create like kind of a flywheel of adoption. We have like new requirements, better data sets, better new questions, things that we cannot. So we do a new data set. And that has fundamentally changed the way that most of our senior executives interact with the data. We see that before they were like looking at the dashboard as a freezing thing, and now they have the dialogue, and that really generates a transformation on how we interact with our data in the company. Craig? Thank you, guys.
With that, one, give Databricks a try. Two, conduct work, ping us, and we're happy to come on site and do a workshop with you on these topics, introduce the team and kind of show them Agent Bricks and walk through some of the best practices. And then three, get some training solutions and accelerators. You can, there are online training classes as well as some accelerators attached to our blogs that help you get started on this. And four, when you fill out your evaluation on reInvent, give us the highest score of any session you went to. All right. So yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we'll do some Q&A down here for anyone who has questions, and then when we get kicked out, we'll move out into the hall. But thank you very much for joining us today.